Again, you can zone all or part of the county. The zones don't have to cover the same territory. They may overlap, and multiple areas may be in the same zone. That means you can have residential in different places. You can have overlay zones. It just means, doesn't mean that all residential has to be connected is one way to think of it. You can put additional standards and overlays. It means you have a historic area and you want to put extra regulation on it. You can put that over, and it might be partially commercial and partially residential. Not as germane for a county as it is a municipality, but it's something important to know. Within each zone, there's got to be, everybody's kind of the same rules, unless there's exceptions spelled out. Utility equipment's got to be allowed anywhere it needs to be. You can't say no power poles, because people need power poles. And you've got to file and certify a zoning map. Safeguards built in the enactment process. Before you even start putting a zoning ordinance, you got to do a study and a report. This is not something you can do in one meeting. Be lucky to do it in 1 year. Public input's required. Literally, the last item there. It's not only do you have to have a public hearing, there's got to be 2 public hearings if you do a zoning ordinance. One in the daytime and one in the evening. Nowhere else in state code have ever found 2 public hearings required and times of day specified. And it's a detailed enactment process. So it's not, as I said, it's not something that you do, this is not something you go into as a lark. And it also can be put up to a vote. On both ends. The county commission can say, we want the voters to decide whether or not this is appropriate.
What if the county commissioners don't say that, but the people want it?
They can do it too, by petition.
Okay.
That's what I said, on both ends. That's actually what's happening in Mon County, is that it's not that they don't want zoning, they don't like the zoning that's been proposed. So they went by petition, and, now the nice thing, the second, recalling zoning was always in there. The first part about putting it to the voters before a recall is something new. And county commissioners, a lot of times you say, we'd love to do zoning, but we think people ought to have a voice in the process. They ought to be able to say whether or not they want this. And I think that's what Berkeley County just did, and it was voted down. That's democracy in action. I don't know specifics about it, but at least, people had their say and they said no. But it does let you, it's not something that can be done that, it cannot be done quietly. You've got to have a lot of public input, and even after it's done, it's not done. Because the public, getting a petition out there and a recall is possible. So there's a lot of safeguards built in this that you don't see anywhere else. Amendment process you can do on, the governing body can say that we want an amendment, or somebody can say petition for an amendment to the zoning. What does it mean when you have a zoning ordinance? Everything from that point forward has got to conform or got to ask for permission not to. But everything that's there is grandfathered in. Nothing changes, and not only the grandfathered in, but it's allowed to progress and grow at a normal amount. You're not frozen. If you have a business, you're not frozen at that level, but you can keep moving it forward. Now, the non-conforming uses, they stop being used for a year, they lose that right. Outside of urban areas, nothing in there prevents natural resources from being used. So you can't zone it you can't enact zoning and then say, oh no, you can't have a gas well on your property, or you can't timber your property. No, you can't do that through zoning. And that's right, that's what state code tells you you can't. At least my interpretation is what it says to me. The variance process allows for exceptions. There are ways to get things moving from that. There's a full, basically this is very powerful but flexible. There's a lot of technical nuances. It's not just a prohibition of certain uses in certain places. It can be that, but it should be much more. If you're going to go into that, where it's appropriate, when it's appropriate. And so there's built-in safeguards and protections. It's not something you should rush into haphazardly. You've got to think this out if you're going to go down that route. But you shouldn't just dismiss it without examination. There's some people who are just against zoning on basic principles, and I think you should look at it and say, if you look at it and say it's not appropriate for here, that's fine. But if you just, it's something though the state code gives you a right. So as a planning commission, you should not just dismiss it because you don't like zoning. Now, if you say way is not appropriate, that is acceptable. And again, it should only, speaking of which, only should be done where and when appropriate. 35 years ago, USDA was promoting zoning of counties to preserve agriculture. Didn't really go very far because it wasn't the right time or the right mechanism. It wasn't the when, didn't meet the when and the where. That's why we got farmland preservation, which I'll go through these last two. The appeals enforcement talked about you establish a board of zoning appeals. All these planning decisions, zoning decisions, can be reviewed. The enforcement is a general governmental. Planning commission get injunctions. Usually, it's the government. The county itself, the jurisdiction itself will seek those. And nothing that you do takes away power from state agency. You can't say something. Say, oh no, you can't do. The health department can't do this anymore because of our planning code. No, you can't do that. It doesn't take away the powers of other agencies, departments, or state government. The appeals and enforcement are usually outside of the Planning Commission. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a separate body. The Circuit Court is a separate body. You may be, remember, you cannot serve on both the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals if you had a Board of Zoning Appeals. That's separate. They make, they're the first level appeal of a zoning decision. If you had zoning or place of zoning, someone comes in wants a variance, they don't get it from the County Commission. You go to Planning Commission, it's not accepted. They appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Separate County Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, Circuit Court do a lot of this, but this flows from your action.